Hi, I'm Tamara, and today we are going to be making this adorable travel checker and chessboard, as well as adding a Tic Tac Toe Board to the back. This whole project can be rolled up, and this zipper pouch is big enough that it will fit the X's and the O's that we are going to make for our Tic Tac Toe boards. They will fit in that zipper pouch, as well as a set of chess pieces and a set of checker pieces. Now I'm going to link to a bunch of different ones in the description down below. As long as you make sure that your chess pieces are kind of your medium size, they will fit in this bag, just not a full large set, okay? I'm sorry, I didn't make my zipper pouch that big. So, what else would I like to mention? My voice might sound different than normal. I apologize. I was sick, but I still wanted to get this tutorial out to you guys. So I apologize if I sound a little funky. And I wanted to let you know that this whole project was done using Michael Miller Fabrics. They sent me a whole fat quarter pack of their gradations line, which is their basics line. I will link to the exact fabrics that I used down in the description below. If I can't find them to link to, I'll at least list them so you can go to your local fabric shop and ask for that particular type if you're interested.
And I used 6 fat quarters for this entire project,
as well as a zipper and some ribbon. So with all of that said, let's jump into this tutorial.
So we are going to start by making our checkerboard first. So grab 2 fat quarters that are in contrasting fabrics, and we are going to cut 22-inch by 2.5-inch strips from either fat quarter. For myself, since I'm working with white fabric and black fabric, I cut 4 strips from the white and 4 strips from the black, putting the rest of the fabric aside as we will use it to make our zipper pouch later on. Then take all 8 strips of fabric and lay them in an every other pattern, and we will sew all of these strips together using a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Now, if I don't say what seam allowance to use, just assume it's a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Later on, I will switch to a 1/2-inch seam allowance, but I will make it very clear that that is when you need to do a 1/2-inch seam allowance. So if I don't say, just assume it's a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Then press all of the seams open before cutting 2.5-inch strips of fabric from this sewn piece. You will need 8 strips of fabric. Then flip some of the strips around, creating that checkerboard pattern, and sew all of those strips of fabric together again using that 1/4-inch seam allowance, and press open your seams once again.
All right, so we've made the center of our checkerboard, and now it's time to move on to our border. Now, a few things before we move on. I want to remind you that as you're cutting up all of your fabrics, make sure you are saving the scraps to all of your fat quarters, because we are using those scraps to make our zipper pouch later on. I also want to say, if you find this tutorial helpful, please hit that thumbs up button, because that is how YouTube knows to share this tutorial with other people who might be interested. I post beginner sewing tutorials every Friday, so if you're interested, hit that subscribe button. Now let's move on to adding the border.
And now it's time to create a border to go around the entire checkerboard. To do that, you will grab a 1/3 fat quarter, and you will cut 2.5-inch strips of fabric once again along the length of the fat quarters, so by around 22 inches. Take all 4 of those strips and sew them around your checkerboard. And once again, save those scraps for later, because we will use those scraps for our zipper pouch. Then trim away the excess strips and then press the seams open or to the side, whatever you would prefer. Next, we want to quilt our checkerboard to our batting. To do this, I used 505 spray, but if you don't have 505 spray, just use a whole bunch of safety pins. Pin the checkerboard to the batting before quilting it however you like. For myself, I drew lines from corner to corner. That way I could follow them along all of the points, and I found that it created a really nice look.
And now it's time for that Tic Tac Toe Board. Believe me, this process will go a lot faster than it did for our checkerboard.
So what you'll do is you'll grab 2 fat quarters, and you'll choose the fat quarter that's going to be in the center of this board. And you want that particular fat quarter to not be a very busy print. You want it to be something that your thread stitches can stand out on. So for myself, I chose this black fabric here, and I cut it out at 15.75 inches by 15.75 inches. Then you'll need to attach a border. So grab your second fat quarter and cut out 4 strips of fabric at 2.5 inches inches by 22 inches in length once again, saving that extra fabric for your zipper pouch. You'll do the same thing as what you did for your checkerboard, and you'll attach all of those strips of fabric around the outer edge, creating a beautiful border. And now it's time to use a contrasting thread to your fabric to sew our Tic Tac Toe board in place. The look that I was going for was a scribbled on Tic Tac Toe board. As you can see on this paper here, when I scribble, I tend to go back and forth. So that's what I tried to do with my sewing needle. First, let's mark where these lines should go. For myself, I just focused on my center square and I measured 5 inches in from that outer edge around all 4 edges. And then I drew my lines on using a water-soluble pencil. So for each line, I started with a back stitch and then I sewed to the opposite end of my line, turned it around, sewed back, turned it around one more time, sewed again all the way to the end, and then ended with a back stitch. So essentially I've got 3 seams on top of each other, and I did this slowly and I tried to move my seams around a little bit to make it look like that scribbled line. Give it a quick press and our Tic Tac Toe board is done.
And now it's time to use those scraps for your zipper pouch.
Now this zipper pouch I made using all 4 of the scraps that came from the fat quarters that we've previously used. So 2 of these fabrics will be for the lining and then 2 for the outer part of your zipper pouch. You will also need a zipper that's around 12 to 13 inches in length. Then you will take all 4 pieces of fabric and cut them at 8 inches by 16 inches. Now before we attach the zipper, we want to make our zipper longer. To do this, we will need to attach scraps to both ends of our zipper. So first we're going to prep our zipper for this. So just take it to your sewing machine and sew a zigzag stitch across both ends of your zipper before you trim away the excess of your zipper. Once the excess has been trimmed away, now we can tuck it in between our scraps of fabric, making sure your scraps of fabric are folded right sides facing in before you tuck the zipper in between that fold, and then sew a 1/4 inch seam across both edges. Then fold these scraps back out so that they are facing right sides out, and then sew 1 more seam along that inner edge, securing these scraps in place. And then it is time to trim away the excess scrap fabric before trimming your zipper to the same width as your zipper pouch, which will be 16 inches wide. Now we can attach our zipper to our fabric pieces. I do have a more in-depth tutorial on how to make a zipper pouch, so I will link to that in the description down below if you want to see what I'm doing at the sewing machine as well. And the only difference is how we finish this zipper pouch up. Oh, and I almost forgot, but when you are sewing your zipper pouch together, you will use a zipper foot to get nice and close to your zipper. And then when you're sewing around the entire outer edge, you will do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now that the lining and the outer pieces of fabric are attached to your zipper, we are going to finish our zipper pouch a little bit differently than you would a normal zipper pouch. We want to seal in the inner lining, but we want to keep the bottom of the outer fabric open. So you'll start at one end, do a little back stitch, and then go all the way around to the opposite end, keeping that one section open. Then you can turn your zipper pouch right side out, push out the little ends, and now we can start putting our entire project together. Trim away the excess batting from your checkerboard, and if you need to, you can square up your Tic Tac Toe board and your checkerboard so that they line up and match nicely.
And now that we have made our zipper pouch, we want to attach it to our game board as well as attaching the ribbon. But don't think that we're stopping here. Wait for it. I still have the game pieces that we are going to make.
When you buy fat quarter packs, they often come wrapped up in ribbon, and I really hate to waste that ribbon, even if it has the brand name attached to it. So thank you, Michael Miller. I will use your ribbon. So I just gave the ribbon a quick press. I gave the zipper pouch a quick press, and I needed 4 strips of ribbon. My ribbon was around 20 inches in length, which gave me plenty of tying space. And now it's time to piece our project all together. So lay your checkerboard right side face up, and then lay your zipper pouch with the raw edge facing out to one edge, and then lay your ribbon opposite wherever you put your zipper pouch. And I laid my ribbon facing together, and have your ribbon stick out the raw edge about an inch out. That way it will be able to be secured in place when you turn everything right side out, because you're often tugging on the ribbon, so you really want to make sure that the ribbon is secure. So lay all 4 pieces of ribbon there, and then lay your Tic Tac Toe board right side facing down on top of that, sandwiching everything together, pin all the way around the entire outer edge, and then sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance around the entire thing, making sure that you leave yourself about a 4-inch opening to be able to turn the entire project right side out. I also like to backstitch at all 4 corners, as well as when I start going over the zipper pouch and the ribbon. Once you've sewn all the way around this entire outer edge, then clip away all 4 corners, making sure not to clip away the seam, of course. And then you can turn your entire project right side out, pushing out all 4 of those corners gently. Give it a quick press before sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance around the entire project, sealing in that open space, as well as securing your zipper pouch and your ribbons in place.
And now on to the X's and the O's.
So to do this, you will need 1 more fat quarter. Make sure this fat quarter is in contrast to the Tic Tac Toe Board fabric that you chose. And you will need to cut 20 4-inch by 4-inch squares from this fat quarter. You will also need to cut 10 4-inch by 4-inch squares from batting. Then it's time to make our O's. So grab 5 of your fabric squares and grab a circular object. For myself, I used a cup, and then just trace a circle onto 5 of these squares. Then you'll make a little sandwich. So 2 pieces of fabric and a piece of batting in the center. Make sure your fabric is facing right sides out, and you will sew around that traced circle before you will grab a pair of pinking shears and snip around the outer edge of that seam. Then it's time to make our X's. Grab 5 more pieces of fabric and mark 1.5 inches in of all 4 edges, drawing lines across your fabric. This will create what looks like a plus sign. Then sandwich your fabric together the same way that you did the O's, and you will sew around the edge of all of these marked lines. Make sure that when you come to the outer edge, you actually sew a 1/4 inch in. That way you have room to still snip away with the pinking shears.
Now I have to tell you, I left this project out on my coffee table, and my son just asked me, like, would you just play a game with me one day? And I thought, yeah, sure. And the more this sat on that table, the more I ended up playing some fun random games with my kids. So I did not intend for this project to be a table topper or table runner of sorts, but I actually highly recommend that you make it and just leave it on your coffee table and see what comes. Please let me know if you liked this tutorial in the description down below, and if you have any questions, always leave them in that comment section. I am checking the comment section and I try to help you out as best that I can. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.